Alright, welcome to the Frankly Fabulous Video Diary. Downtown Diary, Frankly Fabulous style, brought to you by Zaybars. What is it? Our mezzanine has everything for the kitchen and home. World famous smoked fish, cheese from every corner of the world, gourmet emporium. There you go. 80th Broadway at 80th Street. Proudly brought to you by Zaybars, the Frankly Fabulous Video Diary. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to talk. It's just going to be it's going to be totally free form. I think playing tennis without a net is a lot more interesting. It's like performance art, I guess. It's open. It's open possibility at that point. It's more about just how you move the ball around than the kind of like. I think the tension of professional tennis creates like a sameness. All players have to hit the fucking ball 150 miles per hour. They all use the same equipment. I think we need interpretive, performative tennis. And that's what this is. Performative tennis. Maybe it won't pay off. I don't know. I mean, so I want to do this tour of New York City parks. I think I'm going to start this week, maybe Thursday. I've still got to, I'm working on the New York Poetry Festival reading. It's in less than 2 weeks, so that's going to be huge. So, July 24th, don't miss it. It's the poetry event of the summer. It's the Woodstock of poetry. And it's really going to be nice this year because it's outdoors, you know. We're in the White Horse stage. How appropriate. I walk by that place like practically every day. Basically, what I've been doing recently is walking down Hudson. I think that's Hudson, right? Or is that Greenwich? I think it's Hudson. The Uber yuppie Rialto. There's this wonderful place that's got 3 marble tables out front. They just leave the tables in like the dining shed. And so I've been chilling there. It's a good place to be a boulevardier if you have absolutely no money. So I'm putting together my tour of New York City parks, and the point being, they're talks. I'm going to read all my diaries. That's going to be, I guess, the framework. I'm going to read my diaries in the parks. That'll be sort of maybe the source material that I'll work off of, and do asides or footnotes, extrapolations, riffs, explanations, mansplanations. I don't know. I mean, I think I'm like 40 years behind my time. If I was doing what I'm doing like 40 years ago, I'd be like a mind-blowing. Maybe 50 or 60. Actually, 60. I'm probably 60 years behind my time. So I'm going to go to these different parks, and I'm just going to do, I'd say 2 hours, I guess. 2-hour talks. They're not really lectures. They're just like this, right? Just free expressions. Blow as deep as you want to blow. I did one of the first things I wanted to do, and this will probably be a part maybe of the talk. It'll just be like this, except it'll be live. So I don't know. I think the weather's supposed to be nice on Thursday. I want to kind of do like maybe an out of town tryout. I feel like Washington Square Park is probably like my home field, but also I feel like they're cracking down on amplification. The cops there are out of control. Anytime you go, first of all, they close the park at like 10. They put up big like bike rack fucking, you know, looking barricades so you can't even get into the park. But there's literally, you go to Washington Square Park, there's 150 cops, 200 cops, There's hundreds of cops. It's like, what the fuck? Like, killing the vibe. What are they there to control? They're not doing anything. They're just standing around, like, waste of taxpayer money. You want to talk about wasteful fucking spending? I guess they want to keep it from becoming LA or San Francisco, where the homelessness just gets out of control. I don't know. It doesn't seem that bad to me. I bought weed off this guy because I broke up with my drug dealer. Well, he's my medicinal pharmacist. Okay, it's legal. It's legal. It's not even this is all legal now. But so now I'm just like cruising the streets because I don't know. I suppose I'm just every once in a while you hear some guy who's selling stuff. So I'm walking down St. Mark's Place and there's some people sitting on a stoop and they're like, we're selling weed, as I'm sort of walking by. And so I kind of like, okay, what's going on? What's up? And the dude sold me, supposedly it's an eighth, I guess, for $30, which is pretty insanely good deal. I don't know why I'm talking about this on, I don't edit anything out, so it's legal, so there's no problem here. And I was a little skeptical. I was a little like, I was really kind of grilling him about, this isn't like CBD weed. Is this really an eighth? Like what? And he sold $30. I mean, that's less than I was getting it for in Columbus. And I gotta say, it's pretty good. I'm having a great time. I mean, I've been really emotional the last couple days. I don't think it's because of the weed. I think the weed is actually like, a blissful, happy thing. It's cookies or whatever. It's from California. But I have been like super emotional. I think probably because I've just been spending a lot of time. I don't know. Just as I'm thinking back on the lumps I've taken over the past few years, particularly in the past year, it's a lot. It's very emotional, and my lack of success and my kind of outsider status continues, and it's very hard. It's just a painful position to be in, to be right on the cusp of like the world you want to be in, and yet not be able to push through. And I've been in this position for like over 10 years. So it's my own damn fault, right? But it's not fun. So yeah, I'm gonna do these tours of New York City parks, stand up talking. I mean, I talk about it. It's just gonna be like this, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. I've never done this in front of an audience. Part of doing it in a park is it's like I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to engage with people as like a hey, stop and listen to me type thing, or if it's just gonna be like me sort of talking out into the ether and like I said, just be sort of ambient. I really have no clue. Will there be a different kind of pressure because people are listening because it's public? I guess I'm sure there will be. In a certain way, I'm looking for the perfect drug to like get me to that place where like, I mean, that's what we did when I first started using, was like it did kind of like push you through to your self-consciousness to the point where like you found yourself doing things. Yeah, I'm starting pretty late. I mean, it's a late night show. I haven't been sleeping that well either. I mean, there's been a lot of noise. I mean, it's been rainy. The weather has been freaking just horrible. Well, I mean, it's just weird. It's unusual. Everybody knows that we're fucked with climate change. We've already passed the point of no return, and like we're beginning to see really bad. I mean, we've been seeing it for a decade, but it's really starting to get, I mean, the temperatures, it's 100 degrees in a lot of places, and New York City it's like every fucking day there's like kind of the same weather where there's like threatening thunderstorms because I guess high pressure and low pressure systems, they seem like they're really kind of all this hot weather or something coming from out west is maybe meeting up with like the cold weather off the ocean or something. And like right around Baltimore, it's just spinning these kind of like huge weather system. I mean, the one the other day I guess was a tropical storm. We were getting like the end of a tropical storm, but supposedly it flooded the subway. There was a viral video about that. And it's like the climate change is already here. We're already so fucked. You can't melt that much of the fucking Arctic and not expect there to be massive, massive, massive consequences. So it's just been weird because like literally every day around 6 or 7, it gets to be like that kind of rainy. And all the readings are outdoors because of COVID, and they all start at like 7. So like the reading I filmed on fucking Saturday, first of all they postponed it because Friday it was supposed to rain. So Friday it didn't even rain until like 11. And then Saturday, it wasn't supposed to rain, and it did. It was like drizzling the whole reading. And like we got through it, but it was drizzling literally the whole time. I had to cover my camera equipment. I went to a reading on Tuesday in Bryant Park, and they got through about 2.5 readers, and literally it started downpouring. I didn't even take an umbrella. So I walked home in like this heavy rain. They're having it's going to be the same thing tomorrow. It's like it's outdoors. It's at 7 p.m. and it's like a 20%. The prediction and the forecast fluctuates wildly. So tomorrow's a 20% chance. There's a small chance of rain, but I mean it's totally possible you wake up tomorrow and it's all of a sudden it's like boom, it's raining right now. I mean these apps, it's like they can't even predict 10 minutes from now really. Things are so wild, and so I mean it's tempestuous. It's a tempestuous summer. That's the way it feels. It feels hot, sultry, and like these monsoons. What did they say? New York is subtropical now. It's actually in a different climate than it was. It's got magnolia trees and shit. So it's a tempest. It feels like that. It feels like trees bent over backwards in a hurricane breeze. It feels like that. I went to this reading last Thursday at this art center on the Lower East Side. And Marcella Duran mentioned that Will Alexander said, we should all be writing about the weather right now because we're dissociated from it. We act like it's we're all air conditioned, we're all in our climate controlled spaces, and we don't really understand that this is a very tenuous advantage we have over the environment. And in fact, we are part of the environment. We're not like separate. We can't just go to outer space and escape like the climate crisis. Like we are materially dependent and like part and parcel of the continuum of the soil. One of the things they mentioned at this talk, there's more organisms in a teaspoon of soil than there are humans on the entire planet. The soil is alive. Sorry, I didn't realize I was going to be so tired. The land is talking. This is something that a few people have mentioned at different readings. The land is talking. Through them. That's something Robert Kelly mentioned in his in memoriam about Clayton Eshelman. Clayton Eshelman went into the caves at Dordogne. I think that's how you pronounce it, in France, where the first cave drawings are. Deep into the earth. And it said it changed his whole writing and everything. He was writing from the core, the land. He started to speak that experience in that. The stones. This shit is alive, you know. The organisms in the soil have been doing it since the very beginning. And we are created by them. We just walked out of the earth at a certain point. Hopefully it goes on. We'll see. Things are getting... I mean, in the 90s, right? When... I remember in 6th grade, 96, I would take Al Gore's book to school every day, The Earth in Balance. President Al Gore. Or Vice President. Sorry. He never got, actually, unfortunately. If Al Gore would have been elected instead of George W. Bush, we'd be in a whole different situation today. Our world would be completely different. But people thought they were the same because of a fucking Rage Against the Machine video. They're the same. That was a big mistake. They couldn't be more different, actually. I mean, they're not completely different, but like there would have been no 9/11, there would have been no Iraq, Afghanistan, none of that bullshit. And we'd probably be a lot better off environment-wise because Al Gore actually cared about this shit. And so you read this book, I remember reading it in the 90s, and all the predictions in the statistics are like projecting, which at that time was way into the future, like 30 years. They're projecting for 2020. And they're saying if we don't change anything, by 2020, we're going to hit critical points with all of this shit, and global warming will be past the point. This was in the fucking 90s. The scientists have been saying this since like the 70s, since the 60s. They've kind of known about global warming. But they fucking sweep it under the carpet like everything else. All the pollutants and all the chemicals and the food and everything else. The PFAs, the forever chemicals. And so when Al Gore was predicting this shit and the scientists, and he was quoting scientists and shit, for 2020, it seemed like, oh, that's not a real, that's like the future, that's 2001, that fucking aliens will be here. By 2020, we'll be living on the moon. That's like, pff. And yet, lo and behold, here we are. My fucking camera confirms it. It is 2021. 2021. We've passed the 30-year mark. And of course we're hitting the targets. The scientists predicted all of this. They've been saying it for a long time, and big business puts shitloads of money into brainwashing, into cutting really that's their preferred way of dealing with it, is cutting regulations. That's why Trump was such a great president for them, because it just saves them money. If they don't have to spend money on cleanup, and if they don't have to spend money... So, like, at this Rot Talks, the event I filmed, one of the presentations was about toxic elements in our food, in our soil, and everywhere. And just, like, the standards, the regulatory standards for this stuff. It was, like, for dark chocolate, it was, like, 0.003 kilograms per kilogram of, like, arsenic or something. You know, there's lead in our food. There's fucking all these chemicals that are just like microplastics, of course. And then there's these Teflon, right, is supposedly a forever chemical, which means it never decomposes. Literally, it lasts forever. And you're eating, you cook in a Teflon fucking pan, that your food's in that on a microscopic level. It's getting into your food. You're eating it. Our bodies are so full of fucking pollutants. It's really a crime, man. I mean, Roundup is like linked to, what is it, Parkinson's or something? Or on fucking country music television, the goddamn hillbilly TV that I watch, there's this commercial they show every once in a while for Paraquat. Have you or someone you know gotten Parkinson's as a result of using Paraquat? Or like it's a chemical in Roundup or some kind of fucking... Paraquat is like a poisonous thing in Roundup or some kind of fucking... I don't remember. Some kind of farming... what are they called? Crop dusting. What the fuck is that called? Like a... But this is a commercial. You may be entitled to significant compensation because they know that this was in it. They knew it was going to fuck people up. Southern Ohio. I mean, this is what my mom does for her job. The EPA, working for the Attorney General, her job is to go around busting these people who are just dumping chemicals into rivers, into the soil, not cleaning up their mess because it costs money. Putting shit in landfills they're not supposed to put in there. You know, certain shit, batteries, she said fluorescent tubes, TVs. You know, this is stuff you can't just put in a fucking landfill. It has to be disposed of a certain way, and it costs more money. That's why they don't want to do it. So they get slapped with these huge fines, and, like, I mean, honestly, that doesn't make a difference because money is imaginary. There is a fucking flaming whirlpool in the Gulf of Mexico because some oil thing exploded. Like, you can't put a price tag on that. Like, we're not going to be able to eat. We're quickly approaching the point. I read this other article about supply chain is breaking down, so that's great. The price of everything is going up. But, you know, once it starts to get hotter, they're going to be able to grow less food. They're not going to be able to feed people. Like, there's going to be desertification, aerification of the soil. We're quickly approaching that. The water's going to be contaminated. I mean, there's already, who knows what the fuck is in the water. But there's percentages of bad shit in everything. That's basically the moral I took away from it. Our environment is already kind of really polluted with just like kind of irreversible chemicals that will literally never decompose or biodegrade or anything. So what do you do with that? I don't know. Was that the point of humanity? Just trash this fucking planet? Just trash the place like it's Woodstock 99? I mean, we're going to find... I don't know what the way to live morally is, to be honest. Nobody... Like, what? I'm using electricity to do this shit. I've got 3 lights on in this room. I've been running my AC. Anyway, we'll get back to that. I do want to talk about the book of the day. A Fast Life, the collected poems of Tim Dugos, edited by David Trinidad. I don't remember where I got this, but I've had it for a few years. I was talking the other day to Don Yorty about Tim Dugos. He said he was very nice man, and I read this a few years ago. Tim Dugos was kind of on the scene at the Poetry Project. I think probably around like the kind of 70s and 80s. And Ted Berrigan says he's the Frank O'Hara of his generation. I've been thinking and looking more into that generation of poets around circa that time. I mean, with the, let's say, the, past 60 or 70 years of poetry that I've been studying as sort of a stylistic lineage or whatever, there's even kind of, there's concentric kind of eras within that. like at Poetry Project, for instance, and around Poetry Project at that time, around 1980, there was kind of a group of writers that kind of went to other places too, like David Trinidad. I think he didn't get to the Poetry Project till later in the 80s, but he edited this. Dennis Cooper, but also Eileen Miles, that kind of young, I picture like maybe David Wojnarowicz as like a peer of them. Who else was in this kind of group? Parts of this kind of reminded me of Michael Lawley a little bit. It's interesting that Ted Berrigan says Frank O'Hara, because I don't really find it to be like that fast. I've also been reading Frank O'Hara recently, Second Avenue, and The Collected. And I just got Hymns to St. Bridget today, actually, kind of serendipitously through the internet. But Tim Dugo seems kind of like a little more, I mean, particularly the piece that really is kind of an amazing masterwork and kind of unfortunately a capstone to his oeuvre or career or whatever you want to call it, body of work, the G9 piece, which G9 was an AIDS ward in a hospital, I think probably on the Upper West Side, I'm not exactly sure. But it's a long, kind of tall, thin poem, not unlike a Schuyler piece, but it's way more, it's less kind of tightly wound about its, I don't know, kind of like linguistic or alphabetic. It's a little more, I mean, it's just profoundly emotional and impactful and meaningful in just like every line, but it's so, you get the sense that this person is like saying like the most important thing they've ever said. Like, because he's dying of AIDS. So he's, this was 1990, I think, or late 80s. And a lot of these poets and artists and people in New York died of AIDS. I mean, it was a really severe, I mean, you talk about a plague. I mean, for real, like hundreds of thousands of men died. Tim Dugo's Joe Brainerd died of AIDS. I mean, David Wojnarowicz, did he die of AIDS? I'm not sure. Not to be harsh or too flippant about talking about it, but Angels of America, that play is all about this. It's kind of a similar. He's in the hospital because he got pneumonia, I think, or is it bronchitis? One or the other. I think it's pneumonia. I think he's got pneumonia, and it's just like he pulls no punches. But the style is, there's like that kind of simple clarity to it, like a Schuyler, but it's even more relaxed. But at the same time being like higher stakes. Like there's no bullshit in it. It's just like so leveled, and it's like such a serious situation. But it's funny, and it's kind of light in a way. There's a light touch, I think. I mean, I picked this book off the shelf today just to kind of look at it because I was spending the evening at home spending time with my books, which honestly I've not really done that much of. I mean, I have so much intake that I'm always like, I can't even keep up with the new books I have, let alone, my old books or the books I've accrued over the last year. And I'm just always reading so much different stuff. But with poetry, you're kind of reading it in one day or a couple days, you kind of get a kind of a recharge. Like Frank O'Hara, it's like, I could read Frank O'Hara a lot, but if I do it for a couple days, it's like, okay. Then the Tim Dugo's book, to pick it up, to be honest, it drew me in a way that I wasn't really expecting. There was way more in it, and there was way more kind of the style that drew me in. I mean, this is look at this. I mean, this is like a fucking it's 600 pages almost, 500 pages of poetry. And so, like, I went to this event the other day with David Trinidad talking about Beyond Baroque, which he's from LA. And like I said, they were all kind of part of a generation, and there was kind of a mutual respect, but also, like, there were a lot of LA writers involved. Like Dennis Cooper went to LA in the Beyond Baroque connection. And these writers didn't necessarily stay in New York. They came to New York. They were here. I mean, Tim Dugos, this book is kind of organized by place. He lived in Washington, D.C. I think maybe he lived in Philadelphia at one point. Yeah, and then he kind of bounces around New York, Manhattan. He lives in Brooklyn. When I first read it in 2017, there's parts of it where he talks about living, I think, in like Cobble Hill or something. I think he talks about Smith Street or something. So I could kind of relate to it. He mentions Park Slope at a certain point. So I could relate to that. And now I'm picking it up, and he's got a poem about West 22nd Street. So that kind of stuff, I mean, that's a block away. It's a block over. When you're reading the book and it speaks to you in such a direct way, that feels like magic, and it feels like, okay, Tim Dugos is... I mean, it's a night boat, and I think it's worth studying. I mean, I definitely admire David Trinidad's poems a lot, and so to look at them in a context of a sort of a gang, that's one thing they mentioned on this Beyond Baroque talk from Hammer Museum in L.A., was Dennis Cooper kind of put it together like almost in a self-conscious way to be like a gang of writers, like not unlike the New York School or the Surrealists or whatever. And it was David Trinidad and Amy Gersler, and I mean, sort of tangentially, I would say Tim Dugos and Eileen Miles, and so I think it was cool, kind of how they span the country, and to read the work in the context of the political moment of the past few years. And the things that are relevant now. I mean, Tim Dugos was a gay man. He was also a Republican, which I find kind of odd and funny. I think he just... I'm not sure exactly... Well, I'm not sure what his background was, where he was from or anything, but, like... He mentions at one point resenting kind of having to give money to the government. And he's also very religious. Toward the end of his life, I think he went to divinity school to be... And he was a very serious Catholic, I mean, I think throughout his life, not only toward the end, but you can see how that especially at that time, I think he was probably a little bit of like a Reaganite, maybe. He kind of believed in that smaller government thing. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Not to go into Tim Dugos's that aspect of the politics too much. I just thought that was kind of a funny nuance to it. Whereas what makes him particularly relevant, obviously, I mean, COVID is a plague, and I mean the amount of people that died in New York and whatnot. It isn't necessarily anything new. And look at what they went through in the 80s and 90s when they didn't know what the fuck was going on. I mean, could you imagine having sex and then... I mean, it would just be... And that's in this G9 poem. It's just such... It's really a masterpiece. Like, it's a magnum opus. Or maybe not a magnum opus, but like one of... It's a signature piece. I mean, it's a tour de force, but it's not. It doesn't lay it on you like that. Like, that's what was kind of interesting about it. A lot of those writers, David Trinidad, Eileen Miles, they kind of took after Schuyler with the long, thin poem, and the kind of ease and realism and peaceful kind of tranquility of thinking and dailiness. And this has that. It, like I said, it reminded me of the Michael Lawley because it has a little bit more of a matter of fact. Like everything he says sounds like he could be actually saying it to you. It doesn't sound like, it almost sounds like a letter. It doesn't sound like it's really obfuscated to make it like unreadable or poetic or something. It's very, it's not like matter of fact, but it's even beyond, it's relaxed even beyond plain spoken. But at the same time, like I was saying, because there's mortality so apparent, it just cuts through. Like there's a gravity, even, and it's just, that's a very interesting mix this poem has, this G9 poem. Like, and I'm just a big fan of those types of poems, long poems that are kind of thoughtologues, that are tall, skinny, and the line breaks do kind of all the work, just the fun and the surprise, the peekaboo of the line breaks. That was the one piece. I mean, it took me probably an hour or something to read, but you know, I'm just jumping around the book. There's short pieces, a lot of stuff about New York, like David Trinidad, and this was something I was thinking about, the kind of pop culture thing. This was something they mentioned in the talk. Those writers brought, like David Trinidad in particular, has a lot of pieces about like music. He grew up with 60s music, girl group music, movies Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, or you know, just like kind of like kitsch or like campy kind of 60s. That's something him and that Jack Skelly guy we're talking about. I'm not sure if Dennis Cooper, to be honest, I'm not really that familiar with Dennis Cooper. I would say Dennis Cooper, the significance or what distinguishes is he's more on the kind of side of like danger, edge. He's kind of a transgressive writer sexually, and he's kind of, I mean, for an American writer, to be honest, there's not that many writers that dwell in that space anymore, to be honest, where he feels like, because I think he lives in Paris or something now, he does feel like some kind of expat. I don't know, like he's got his blog that's like super keyed in. Like Dennis Cooper definitely follows like the most cutting edge shit, and he picks, but he also kind of has his kind of like school of like, not that it's my place to say, but kind of like gay boy, like aesthetic followers, and like him being kind of a trans. I know this book, The Sluts, is very significant. His novels, he seems like Houellebecq or one of these writers that's like John Reichy or something, Reiki or whatever that guy's name is, who writes these novels, or you know, I mean Burroughs, I guess, to some degree, where like there's maybe something like kind of illegal. Like that, I don't know. That does feel like more of a French thing. I was reading about some other French writer that Semiotex just published their book, where this guy had AIDS and he like knowingly had sex with people and wrote about it. And that was like kind of dangerous and transgressive, and that's kind of what made it like this hot literary thing. I mean, not that Dennis Cooper would do that per se, but his books seem like they kind of dwell in that kind of dangerous space. I've got his poetry book, and there's pop culture, because they all grew up in the 60s and the 70s, of course, and so they talk about punk, and they talk about hippie stuff too, in a weird way. Before punk happened, you know, there was they all kind of were hippies, or sort of tried to be to some degree, I think, because that was just what was going on. Maybe they didn't fit in with that totally. And then they sort of came into their own in the late 70s, kind of around 1980. David Trinidad talks about that's when they kind of grouped at Beyond Baroque, which at that time, I'm sure Venice was like not a very safe place. I mean, that story Rollins tells about getting robbed and the people killed his friend. They killed him. They shot him. They would have killed Rollins too. That was like in, you know, the late 80s, early 90s. What is it, 93 or something? So, like, Venice was, like, a dangerous place. And I don't know. Beyond Baroque seems to go kind of unsung in a way as part of American letters because, I mean, those people, like I said, they all did readings at Poetry Project and they were involved at Poetry Project, but there doesn't seem to be kind of a continuation of that ligament or that connection. Like perhaps there could be, considering it's L.A., New York, L.A., I would say it's kind of the comparable organization that's there. I mean, LA being not necessarily the most, it's not like as concentrated of a literary outpost. The writers are a little more dispersed out there, I find, and the scenes are a little more, there's not quite as much concentration. But the work, I think, is serious, and I think it could be tied into the national conversation more. And so there are characteristics like the New York school, the second generation, Ted Berrigan and Frank O'Hara, of course, right? They did that too, right? Pop culture, incorporating song lyrics or song titles as part of kind of like the fabric of the poem. Not necessarily like even, but it kind of came out differently in these writers. I wouldn't even know what to call this group of writers. I don't even think there really is a name of these writers kind of around 1980. Chris Kraus and Greg Masters, to be honest. Greg came around that time. He was on the Poetry Project, you know, he was the editor of the newsletter. And there's certain things that they all have in common. Kevin Killian, Dodie Bellamy, the auto-fiction thing. It's sort of, you know, they're reprocessing the things they grew up with, the beats, or Tim Dugos mentions Anne Waldman. He has this great New York City diary piece, which is almost like a Joe Brainerd diary, talking about a trip that he and his poet friends took from D.C. to New York in 73 or something before he moved there. And they go to the Poetry Project and they see Taylor Mead and he mentions that he doesn't think Bill Zavatsky's poetry is very good. And they meet Anne Waldman. They run into Anne Waldman like on the street and they hang out with her and she's really cool with them. So it's interesting because it ties in with a lot of these other kind of outrider lineages and networks. All of it's a rhizome, let's say, right? That's the structure. So you can say there's a rhizomatic organism of poets throughout the body of this country, almost like one of those subterranean mushroom systems, or, you know, like the world's largest living organism is like this lung of, you know, intercalated mushrooms or fungus, right? It's a fungus under like Tennessee or something, or Kentucky. It's like this is like the biggest living organism in the world, and it's communicating. We know this. The trees talk to each other. The dirt vibrates. The dirt speaks. The dirt has a frequency. And the fungus carries information as well. And so, you know, these poets in LA, the poets in San Francisco, the poets in goddamn Ohio, there needs to be more getting around, socializing, talking, giving each other tours of their towns, taking each other to readings, booking each other on readings, traveling to each other, giving each other their books, publishing each other. I mean, now the internet, right, is really, I think you can exist on both levels. I think it's beautiful. I think the Zoom shit should stay. I think people should continue to do Zoom readings, frankly. I think it's great. I think it should become a normal part of lives, because the ability to have like a worldwide online open mic is pretty fucking cool. And like I regret not being able to attend more events during the pandemic because of the circumstances that I was under. It was really a missed opportunity, to be honest. I could have gone to the Wednesday night workshop at Beyond Baroque every fucking week. They've been doing it online. I could have gone to it in Columbus, Ohio, no problem. But I could have gone to all the Poetry Project events at the same time. I could have gone to the City Lights events at the same time. Go to events in Paris, France at the same time. Go to events in fucking Australia, Japan. But, so I hope people continue to do that. I hope that we're plugged in enough that remains. But I also think it's nice that the poems are inclusive of that. That's once again kind of a characteristic of New York school stuff, really. Name dropping is one word for it, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Gilligan's Island, okay, that's a... Note and sonnet for Ted Berrigan. The way I used you in my poems after June 1973, meaning nothing I know. 1974, it's January 5, it's Washington. It was New York 2 days ago. Prince Street, outside Randy's window. Nothing I know, I thought I was being shy. I know Ann Waldman. I know Michael and Terry. I know the church at Prince and Elizabeth that rings the high-speed Angelus 6 a.m. Dear Ted, I know so many people who love you. Read the sonnets all afternoon in D.C. and my poems, The Terrible Windows, the way I was using you. And there's just a lot of stylistic things. I mean, that's one thing that was interesting about reading the career of this book, this poem, A Fast Life. You get that's the impression that I got, that was kind of like the magnum opus, because it's almost like a series of like sonnet length stanzas, and it's kind of like, it looks pretty serious. I didn't read that one, but that was kind of an early, it looks like before he moved to New York. In the mid-70s he wrote that piece. So it's a fun book. It's serious. The David Trinidad book is maybe a little bit more playing with like pop culture things and weaving that into his stuff is more kind of after Schuyler, where it's like, it's very like painterly in a certain way. The way that he and just the density of it. It's more kind of like packed, kind of like poetic stuff. This, it's kind of interesting because it's like any of those writers that can kind of like ease up a little bit, and but not be too conversational, not be too like it sounds like speech, or it's not necessarily using some kind of highfalutin grammar or syntax or verbiage, some kind of pretentious. It's not pretentious, I wouldn't say. But there's also certain qualities that I would say that it doesn't necessarily share with New York school per se. I don't know. I think there's like I said, there's a little bit less of like the painterly surface word as object quality, flat surface. The painting is a flat surface. Even though these are kind of action paintings in that they're diaries, some of them. In a lot of that, to be honest, I would say most of the stuff in this is autobiographical that I saw, and sort of immediately autobiographical, like a diary. And so, but I don't know, it was a little bit less like a grid. It felt less like a grid, but it also doesn't feel like just somebody who's put line breaks into their talking either. So it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like this is an era that the Poetry Project now kind of resonates with. If you look at the 60 almost year history of it, 55-year history, a lot of it, to be honest, is hetero and maybe male dominated or hippie, or the values are not necessarily, or white. I mean, the Poetry Project has always been inclusive and diverse, but it's also predominantly white, I would say. I don't and now this literature is kind of being brought back. I know they've had Dennis Cooper at the marathon, and this year, and so to think about this time when it was around the time when Eileen Miles was the director, there were queer poets in that, and it, in the office and running the organization. You know, I think Tim Dugos was the newsletter editor at one point. It's interesting to see how different people kind of use Frank O'Hara kind of way of looking at the world and processing it into their poetry, their material. I'm going to zoom in real fast just because I want to change up the angle slightly. I want to get some more detail. I don't know. I probably shouldn't do like a whole lecture. Because to be honest, I mean, I did spend a lot of time with this book tonight, and it really kind of blew me away, to be honest. But, yeah, grace. That's a good word. There's kind of a grace. Maybe I'll just read a little bit of this. But he mentions a lot of the places, streets around here that I've kind of been on. I thought this was kind of interesting. Once I start remembering, so much comes back. There are 49 names on my list of the dead, 32 names of the sick. Cookie Mueller changed lists Saturday. They all will, I guess. The living, I mean, unless I go before them, in which case I may be on somebody's list myself. It's hard to imagine so many people I love dying, but no harder than to comprehend so many already gone. My beloved Bobby, maniac and boyfriend. Barry reminded me that he had sex with Bobby on the coat pile at this Christmas party 2 years in a row. That's the way our life together used to be, a lot of great adventures. Who will remember Bobby's stories about driving in his debutante date's father's white Mercedes from hole to hole of the golf course at the poshest country club in Birmingham at 3 a.m., or taking off his clothes in the redneck bar on a dare, or working on Stay Hungry as the dresser of a then unknown named Schwarzenegger? Who will be around to anthologize his purple cracker similes? Sweating like a... Well, I'm not going to say this. This is one thing this was a problem I had with his work. He uses the N-word, like, liberally. not liberally, but like it happens a few times in the book. And to be honest, like, I don't know. I'm not necessarily sure. Is he from the South? Is he from... Let's see. He seemed kind of, like, possibly racist, maybe. But not like... I mean... So, okay. Well... It doesn't say where he was born, really. It says he was D.C., but he was a young Republican, so... Let's see. Okay, here we go. Springfield, Massachusetts. Okay. Weird. Anyway. The guy's from the South that he's talking about, so... You know, this was a different time. Hotter than a half-fucked fox in a forest fire. The ones that I remember have to do with heat. Bobby shirtless, sweating on the dance floor of the tiny bar in what is now a shelter for the indigent with AIDS on the dock strip. Stripping shirts off Chuck Shaw, Barry Bragg, and me. Rolling up the torn rags, using them as pom-poms, then bolting off down West Street, gracefully, despite the overwhelming weight of his inebriation. Vaulting over trash cans as he sang, "I like to be in America," in a Puerto Rican accent. When I pass, who will remember? Who will care about these joys and wonders? I'm haunted by that more than by the faces of the dead and dying. So that, I mean, it's almost like prose, I guess you'd say. It's one of these things that's like prose broken into little lines, but there's a very deft and like subtle poetics. I think that's why this piece is like such a culmination, and like he's just working at like a very, very high level, like a to be honest. I mean, like, this is like, it's one of those pieces that just feels like this is the best writing of like this person's life, and it's kind of like this work of genius, really, because it's so, the technique is so subtly laced into it, you can't even tell. It's just it's seamless, you know. It's imperceptible, and it's not pushing super hard with technique. It just does a little bit to show you, like, okay, we know what we're doing, you know. And also just the portrayal of the lifestyle. Like, I just love this character that he's talking about. The guy driving his dad's, what is it, white Corvette or debutante dad in the golf course. That's like exactly like a story my old boss told me about his dad flipping a Corvette because they own a golf course, driving, you know, after the prom or something, getting wasted, and like ramping his Corvette and like flipping it on the fucking hill of the golf course. This is what rich people do. And then the picture of the guy like on West Street vaulting over the trash can singing West Side Story. It's just kind of I think as far as like a representation thing, I think it's just such a like vibrant and accurate portrayal of like gay men, you know, for lack, not, like I said, not that it's my place to say, but I think that this poem is full of things like that, where he's remembering people or little moments, scenes. He kind of weaves that all. It's aleatory and it's a collage, but you can't even tell. Like, it's just such a smooth, like, you're in the hospital room and he tells you kind of, and then, you know, he goes and he tells about this and then this, you know, it's like, but it's not, it doesn't feel like it's about that. Like a Skylar thing feels more like it's about the fact that he's thinking about how to write a poem. This feels more just like, it kind of feels like the experience, but it also feels like, you know, somebody telling you about the experience. And I don't know, one of the one of them, not to change totally, but like I have been going to a lot of readings, thankfully. That's what I'm here for. I just need to embrace this. I just need to say yes, 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 yes to every little gift that life gives me. Like, so I went to this reading, and it was probably one of the best readings I've been to. Well, I've been to just some great shit, honestly. I mean, just recently, just like most of the shit I go to is just like incredible. The fucking reading I went to last Thursday, I think it was Thursday, at that art center on the Lower East Side was incredible. Like, honestly, Nicole from Poetry Project gave one of the best readings I've ever fucking seen. Like, her work is like so fucking amazing and profound, and it's just matured like so quickly in the past couple years, and it's just like it's just unbelievable, to be honest. Like, I can't, I like how where's I'm ready to read the book. Like, it's like this is some of the most important shit I think being written, to be honest. It's just on a very deep level. It's not fake. It's not forced academic manufactured. It's like it was very ceremoniously, and like the way it was developed was like sacred. And it just it works on that level, to be honest. It really feels important. So that was the reading I went to last Thursday. And then Eileen Miles read all these poems about True Blood, which was kind of funny because they said they were watching True Blood, and the vampires and stuff seems like kind of a good metaphor for certain things, economically or whatever in our world. But she was talking about the Bill Compton guy, and it's funny because I should probably have told Eileen Miles this, but like everything, I didn't. When I worked in this restaurant in Columbus right before I moved to New York, the first time, my boss's wife, and he was just like, he was like a jock from Upper Arlington. He was, like, they were like, she would like stare at me while I was like trying to cash out or whatever, like clock out. She's like staring at me. I'm like, what? And she's like, you ever watch that show True Blood? And I'm like, no. And she's like, you look just like the guy on True Blood. She's like staring at me. She's like, it's like weird. And it's like, I don't really think I looked. This is something that just happened. But I just have one of those faces, or this is something that's been happening to me increasingly frequently. It's just like people tell me I look like people. Like on the other night, 2 people told me I look like Johnny Depp. Different times. 2 entirely different people on the street told me I look like Johnny Depp. And so my boss's wife at the time, like I said, this was 2008. This was when True Blood was on originally. She's like staring at me. She's like, you look just like Bill Compton. Which, it's funny because that was around the time that Twilight came out. And other people would tell me that I look just like fucking Robert Pattinson. And it's like, I don't think I look really that much like either of those people necessarily. I think I just have one of those faces, Or like I'm a protean imitator. And so they're seeing my schizophrenic mirror self. A chameleon. I inhabit the shape of whatever. Or isn't there a Star Trek? The fucking dude on Deep Space Nine, can't he like turn into whatever he touches or something? So, yeah, True Blood, yeah. I heard that when Democrats are in, like the horror movies genres that are like the monsters that become like in vogue or like psychologically relevant to whatever the subconscious, unconscious nightmares or fears or of the population manifests. Like when Democrats are in power, vampire movies become really popular because, see, I should have said all this Eileen Miles, but I didn't because I'm a fucking idiot and I'm just wasting my life. But it's fun. That's my job. It's my job to waste to take my white skin and just ruin all my potential. That's the greatest thing I can do as a white male. Just throw it all away. Destroy myself. Subjugate my own power. That's my political action. That's my act of terrorism. I'm a self-terrorist. Crashing the metaphorical planes into the metaphorical 9/11 towers of my self-esteem and confidence and belief, and then when Republicans are in power, I guess it's zombies, right? Because everybody's brain dead. Like when Bush was in office, it was all like Day of the Dead. That's when the Snyder zombie movie came out. I heard that somewhere. So that was like a phenomenal reading. And then Saturday, the Rot Talks, that was fucking phenomenal. They did this puppet thing. Oh my god. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. It was incredible. I love huge puppets. One of my favorite things in life. I love giant puppets. There's nothing better. Well, I mean, I don't know if I'd say that. There's definitely things that are better than giant puppets. But giant puppets are really magical. They're one of the most magical things we can do as human beings. That's why they're completely irrelevant. And totally economically meaningless. And excommunicated from having any financial value, really. Like Malkovich. Being John Malkovich. That whole movie, the joke of it is that they're puppeteers. And they're kind of like poets. To me, it's almost like they're surrogates for poets. Because it's just like the most like Siberia of like annoying. Like there's mimes, there's puppeteers, and there's poets. Like nobody wants to fucking like. And yet those are three of the most magical, like basic. I think our society's just turned inside out. This is another example. Dance, this is another thing. Our society just has no economic respect for. Is this like super dark? I can't tell. So put all the mimes, the poets, the puppeteers, Craig, and being John Malkovich. I've kind of adopted my look. I feel like I've become like a sort of a Charlie Kaufman scripted character. Just my life. You know, my goal, I think, when I lived in Ohio was to, like, write a movie as good as, like, a Charlie Kaufman, and then, or a Wes Anderson, make a movie that was sort of like something like that, like some kind of magical realism, poetic, new wave, whatever, cinematic masterpiece. And then, when I moved to New York, my goal became to become one of the characters from their movies, to become a puppeteer or a Caden Cotard or a Margot Tenenbaum, the playwright. There's no poets, right? What the fuck? I mean, Tenenbaum's, honestly, you can tell Wes Anderson really didn't know that much about New York when he wrote it, because there's a lot of shit that's missing. There's no like avant-garde really. Like she's like a Broadway and shit. Like I feel like Margot Tenenbaum would be like a performance artist. She'd be like Carolee Schneemann or whatever, like pulling bloody shit out of her vagina or something. If the Royal Tenenbaums was like real, maybe they should remake it. Like they remade Gossip Girl. Are we ready? I think I'm ready for the Royal Tenenbaums remake. Can we get like a fucking female directed queer Royal Tenenbaums or something where she's a performance artist. She's like Kathy Acker or something. She mutilates herself, and like, I guess they kind of did that in Lebowski. Maud Lebowski's kind of like a performance artist, like with her menstrual blood or something. Painting with her menstrual blood or something like that. Who else? What would Richie... I mean, he's a tennis player, I guess, still, but maybe he'd be trans or something. I don't know. Chaz would be in tech. He'd have some kind of app that he... You know, as a kid, he would have invented... He'd be a programmer or something. He would have invented... Or maybe he'd work for Goldman Sachs. Chazzy. Royal Tenenbaum is kind of like the ultimate, like, old school white male patriarchal figure. I think that's kind of the joke of those movies. It's just like unbelievable the way this guy talks and the kind of like man's manness of that. Maybe I'll read some shit. Oh, I wanted to talk about, I went to the reading on Sunday, which was my friend Akosawa's birthday party. She very graciously and generously invited me. It was an open mic on Zoom. And I didn't really... When it comes to like open mics and stuff recently, I've been kind of more just... Because I get my yayas out with this. And I don't know. I'm kind of like trying to transition into more professional, established career and shows, or find it. I mean, not that I'm opposed to open mics. Like, I love open mics, but like, I also just want to listen. You know, that's kind of a part of it, to be honest. And so when I go to stuff, I mean, going to an open mic's not really any different than any other. It's still a goddamn reading. You're still listening to poetry. Like, it's still pleasurable. I still love to just listen. And it was a fucking phenomenal reading, to be honest. She has got a group of unbelievably talented friends. Like, holy shit. I was so honored to be there, and just like, they all read for like 2 minutes. Nobody went long, hardly at all. It was all just like fucking fire. They all had different writing kind of styles, and they all worked. I loved that. It was just like, it wasn't subscribe, but it was coming. It was maybe coming. It wasn't subscribing to any one aesthetic or any one. Hey, you have to. You know, we don't. You know, we don't like that kind of writing. It was like, there was stuff that was kind of like slam. There was stuff that was like, I mean, the piece that she read was really well done. I mean, it was excellent. It was actually kind of like, it was a real thing. You know, a lot of poetry, it's like, it's art, and I celebrate it. But then there's like, there can be profound truths and like really heavy, and just like, I mean, it wasn't like trying to like dazzle you. I mean, a lot of times with language, when people are trying to be impressive with poetry, it's like they use some kind of like over the top word or some kind of performative word. Her piece really, it had more integrity, to be honest. There was like it didn't go for that cheap effect, and it really got something better. And not very many people. I mean, she has this like seminar kind of thing where she calls herself an authorpreneur, and she self-publishes and she edits. And a lot, you know, I think some people at the open mic, she had helped them kind of workshop, and she'd help them put books together. She helped them publish books. And honestly, the fucking work was strong as hell. Like, it's working. And like, that's so powerful. And I met her kind of in an interesting roundabout, like unexpected way, because I had met Bobby Stone at the Public Access Awards, when I gave my speech, we were the only two guys wearing tuxedos. And so we kind of like were kindred spirits in a lot of ways because we're both DIY. We just kind of put it out there. And he's a great artist. I mean, he's a total inspiration and a hero. And like, he's living properly. He puts out movies. He puts out music. He was at the open mic, so it was great to see him. And he was fucking phenomenal. I think he was the only other guy there, or there was maybe one other guy. And so he invited me to be on his radio because we met at the Brick Free Speech Awards the year that I won, and he said he liked my speech. He resonated with what I was saying, and he has a radio show, The New Old School, and it's dope. I mean, it's in a studio. It's in fucking Dumbo. So I took the train down to Dumbo. He fucking interviewed me on a show. It was awesome. We played a wavetable song. It was very, it was very cool of him to like accept me and reach out and invite me into that. Because I'm like a hipster Brooklyn fucking white dude or whatever, like. But I want to bridge, or like I was talking about, the rhizome. And just what I realize now is, like, these are my people. Like, I'm an outsider. I mean, I'm trying to be a part of the family of, like, the institutional kind of good poets. But, like, to be honest, most of my history has been, like, doing open mics and kind of meeting people around the fringes of it. Other people who are also kind of, like, placeless or displaced or kind of nomad, I guess. People that aren't established, people that aren't really that published, people that aren't academics or have jobs or known. I don't know. Most of the people that I've met, I'd like to think that I've met a lot of people who I recognize their talent early, and I think they will go places. But maybe I've been doing that this way so long that it's just like that's where I belong, with the kind of people that like are just doing it for love of it. I mean, that's really why I do it. I hope that my life hasn't just been like a completely selfish waste, because like I have like fought hard and I have like probably neglected a lot of things to just make room to be able to do this, and it is very self-indulgent. I mean, I barely spend time with anybody else at this point, and like I've pushed a lot of things out of my life to make room for books, poetry, writing, this, and making the books and meeting. And so now I really have the opportunity to like fully live it all the time. Like I can go to any goddamn reading I want to go to, and there's no excuses, really. I've got the perfect setup. It's like I've got to make this work, and it's cool. It is starting to work, but I was just so honored to be at this open mic. So yeah, I was on Bobby Stone's radio show, and Akosawa was also a guest, and she had read some poems when she was there. I mean, how fucking cool is that, on his radio show? Like, that's pretty awesome for him to invite that, and to be smart enough to invite that, because she's real. She's not like some self-published like person that's just like fucking around. Like, she runs it like a business, and she's good. She really is good. Like, she deserves a bigger platform, and I try to invite her to stuff and do stuff. I would love to weave a connection, and I think she lives uptown. I think maybe she lives in the Bronx. I don't remember exactly where, but I think that's cool too. Even within New York. I mean, that's the one thing that I kind of realize with my tour is like, even within New York, there's a lot of stuff to see, and there's a lot of places to play and to go. Like, I've never hardly even been to the Bronx, to be honest. I mean, Queens, definitely I've been there, but like, there's a lot of shit there I haven't seen. There's a lot of, I mean, there's probably a whole poetry world there. Uptown, there's a whole thing. In the Bronx, I'm sure there's a whole thing. Like, and even in Brooklyn, it's like there's all these groups and organizations, like fucking Brownstone Poets, or there's this one I've been meaning to get to. It's an open mic. They do it every Sunday on Gowanus. And it's like, there's just a lot. And that's the beautiful thing about New York, is like, you can travel around, and these distances are farther. That's one thing I realized just traveling on foot so much and walking even downtown Manhattan on foot, is like, these things that seem close together there's a lot there. There's a lot of density, and there's a lot of to see. It's not just like 8 subway stops and you're warping. It's like there's a lot in the territory. There's a lot built up. There's a lot stacked. It's rich. And it's sort of inexhaustible. And so why not take vacations within the subway system? You know, $3, you can take the fucking train to Rockaway, Rippers. I could do a show out there. I'll do a Coney Island show. Staten Island show. You know, I want to get to know these poets in Washington Square. I feel like I need to kind of like ingratiate myself with them and become one of them and make that my job. Figure out how to make money on the street, selling books, selling my poetry, selling my books, writing poems. You know, these people that like have the typewriters that are like, will write you a free poem or whatever. It's like, I should be doing that. That's exactly, I'll have a conversation with somebody. Why wouldn't I do that? Like, that's exactly what I should be doing in my life. There's people that are already doing this, and I'm not one of them. That's insane. This is like absolutely the perfect thing for me to be doing. Because I can talk, it'd be a great way to meet people, which I already want to do. And as I'm talking to them, I can write the poem, so it'll be personalized. And to be honest, it will just be better. Like, these poets who are writing this stuff, I guarantee you, it's not as good as what I can make. Something that's really going to be a nice piece of art in a very contemporary and a very like rarefied. I mean, my technique, the things that I have studied, I think, have created a hard-earned an idiosyncratic approach that not a lot of people could produce. So I think in Washington Square Park, like, that could be a very marketable, enticing thing. I mean, it'd be a way to build social media. I see these poets, they all have typewriters. They all have like those really tiny, so I need to get like a typewriter. I was looking at typewriters today. Like one of those Olivetti's or like a Hermes Rocket. That's the one Frank O'Hara mentions. I need like a tiny typewriter, and I need to take like my TV stand or something. I need some kind of stand. So I'm thinking about how am I going to get my shit there. I need like a cart probably. I could play music, I guess, through my PA. I could take my books. So, I don't know. It's already July 13th. I need to really get this shit together because the weather, you know, by September 30th or end of October, it's going to be over for that kind of shit. Then we'll be back inside again, hopefully. But, Yeah, I mean, I went to her reading on my phone, my new phone. I had to go to fucking the Apple store to use the Wi-Fi. So that was another reason why I didn't necessarily want to do the open mic, because I wasn't sure what the sound was going to be like, if they were going to be able to hear me or what. Maybe I should have. Maybe it was lame of me to not participate. I mean, that's kind of a cop-out. Like, you should bring, I didn't really prepare anything. And, well, this is the other thing. Is like, the work that people were doing was so serious, and it was so, like, it felt very relevant, to be honest. And it felt like they meant it with their life. And so I didn't want to necessarily read something that was going to be less accountable. And so that's something I've been thinking about. And I've been thinking about that for a few years. It's like, how can I write about the changes that need to be made and the injustices of our society in a way that is serious and but personal. What can I say about it as a white guy? What can I say about it that's not going to be... I mean, that's why I listen, to be honest. That's why I'm there. And in all the readings I go to, it's just like, poetry in a lot of ways is just kind of like the smartest thinking. People organize their thoughts artistically in the smartest things they say, in the things they really want to say, in the things they really mean, the deepest, most personal things, and then they read them out loud to you. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's perfect. It's the ultimate form of sharing and human entertainment, as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing I'd rather hear. And I think I write that level, but I also am kind of preoccupied with my own interests and pursuits. I'm not necessarily... I mean, obviously we are in a struggle for the life of this planet, but also there are people that are in more immediate struggles that... I mean, there was just some really powerful work read. And I learned from hearing all voices, all styles. I love to hear people that rhyme. I love to hear people that just talk from the streets and who are real as fuck. This one girl had this great line about the 300, now we're one. I mean, it was all fucking phenomenal in all different ways. It was just like, I was so blown away. But I think it also made me, because, I mean, to be full disclosure, I was the only white person there. And I was really like the only guy there, practically. I mean, Bobby Stone left. He had to go do something. And then there was another guy who read, but I think he left. So it was like I was the only white person. I was the only white person there the whole time. And like, the vibe I got was like, they were not totally cool with fucking white people. And like, there was some lines about white privilege and shit. And it's like, yeah, hell yeah. Like, I'm here. But it didn't feel like they were trying to make like a career or get attention off that. Like, certain people I feel like have kind of made their career off of like fetishizing, like, oh, this is like the writer that like white people love to, like, if they want to like get tons of like information about why they should feel bad about themselves, this writer just like serves it up. Like, that's their whole fucking career. Like this, I mean, this was just all like truthful, needed to be said, and it was core. There was nothing indulgent that was said. It was all like just like the most relevant truths. And so, yeah, that's what I was there for, to be honest. And I think it's good for people to be in environments where they are the extreme minority. You know, I think probably part of white privilege is not going to spaces where you're uncomfortable or you're not alpha priority or whatever. You know, and not to be a total fucking nerd about it, but I also went to Stonewall. I'd never been to Stonewall. I mean, I've walked by it, 1,000 fucking times. I walk by it every day practically. And I just never, I mean, there's always a lot of people there. I just thought, what the fuck? Let me go in. Let me see what it's about. And I was high, so I was a little bit paranoid about, like, am I giving off, like, straight energy? Like, because people were kind of, like, looking at me. People were kind of, like, startled and, like, what's this guy doing? I don't know. I'm trying to, like, get over and come to terms with this. Like, I don't want to look at myself like I'm automatically the bad guy. Like, I just want to be friendly. Like, I really appreciated the invite to the reading. I loved the reading. Like, I loved the work. I'm not trying to, like, be exploitative or appropriative or anything. Like, I just felt like I was very pleased to listen. And, admiring and wanting to hear and change and recognize, hear their experience, hear their truth, speak on it, to see the way there were people smoking fucking blunts. It was awesome. In their Zoom windows. I'm like, yeah, these are my people. I was worried because I didn't want to, and I wasn't high, to be honest. I wasn't high at all. Because I didn't want to make a fool of myself. I wanted to be, polite and show respect. So I didn't smoke or anything. I went and I was like sober and just trying to be supportive. And I don't know. This is what needs to happen, right? Like, there needs to be cross transaction and relation and just friendliness. And how can I help, really? What can I do? To think more seriously about that. That does need to be a part of the work, absolutely. And if of course I've tried to write. Part of the political act is just listening and supporting, though. You know what I mean? Like at the open mic, I don't need to take up time. I don't need to, like, put my dumbass point of view across. Like, maybe I should have. I don't know. I was going to read this little thing. I don't know if it would have been right. It was a little thing about the woman with her dog, but it just felt like it wasn't about anything compared to somebody that's really writing about. But it wasn't cliches. It wasn't cliches at all, to be honest. I mean, that's one thing with political writing. Even with cliches, you can get applause because, like, people are just applauding the politics. There were no cliches in this. It was all good writing. But it was political. And that's important. I mean, it's... What can we do? as insiders in this country, and particularly, okay, me, right? I'm a white male. I've got privilege. What can I do to make maximum impact to reverse America's crimes against the planet, white supremacy? What can I do? What's the, like, we have the opportunity. We're within. We've always tried to influence elections, to vote, to speak on it, to write about it, to perform. You know, my work has always been political. But is that enough? I don't know. Not at this point. Like, I think I probably do need to make more of an effort to, like, educate myself so that I actually have something to... I don't know what to say, really. I mean, other than the way that I speak on this to specific injustices, I mean, speaking about this situation in Washington Square Park, this is a big part of it, because, like, the street life of this city and the war that's going on between the cops and the citizens in the city and the street people is racial, absolutely. And black people are the ones who are just forced to defend themselves. They're just attacked without provocation from the word go. And so they're in the park protesting. They're riding everybody's riding these fucking scooters around. This guy yesterday, when I was at the reading in the Apple store, this guy came up and he rolled the biggest fucking joint. It was like a cigar. This guy literally put, like, it was probably more than an eighth. It was like... He came up, he said something to me. I couldn't hear him because I had my headphones in. He said something, and he, like, laughed. And he was rolling this joint forever. Like, he was rolling it back and forth, and he put all this fucking weed in it. I just thought, God damn, like, this is a public place. Like, we're just, like, the Apple Store Plaza in the meatpacking district. You know, there's a fucking Starbucks. Like, this guy's rolling, like, a Cuban cigar of weed. And I'm just like, God bless you. And then he got in his laptop. I'm like, yeah, this guy's my dude. We're the same. He's using the Apple Store Wi-Fi. He's smoking a huge ass burrito joint. Like, this is my dude. I'm a street person, you know? That's part of this. That's why I wanted to perform in parks and in fast food restaurants, to bring my poetry to the people and go viral, maybe, perhaps. That's where it happens. And the social media. Have people follow me on social media. I need a better handle. I need to think of that. But so I don't know. Like, I think it did just, like, I felt like insanely just, like, lit up by that reading. I do think it changed my perspective. I was able to see and to be welcomed really meant a lot. Because, to be honest, like, it is like an unfamiliar person. It is like, we're trying to create spaces. We're trying to safe spaces. And here's what I should have read. Here's what I should have read. Maybe. I mean, the shit they were reading was, this one woman's name was Pussy something. I forget what it was, but they said her name a few times, like, Pussy, are you ready? And I was like, wow, these women are just like awesome. Like they're just cool. They're not like uptight. They're not nervous. Like they're fucking real. They're not getting like pissed about stupid shit. Like the flow of it was cool. Like 6:30 cunt loonies. Wait a minute, is this it? Yeah, it's too late to pick up where we left off. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Applesauce lubricates my week. People know how many stairs it takes to get to their apartments. 7-1 in the mind zone. Smooth operator. Smooth operator. Touch of modern Halo channels. Try free blindfolded except for the stars. 7-2 kilowatt hours. I get overzealous about Plaza. Combustible airwaves ate a few tears in the know. 7-3 first things first. Breakup texted my drug dealer. Post nasal drip. Get out while you can. Common decency, it feels good to be outside. Trying just to breathe. The roaring 20s are on fire. Oops, I did it again. Skipped a grade when I shouldn't have. Magnolia's on fire. Cumin is on fire. India is on fire. Corvette is on fire. This older couple playing peekaboo around a statue with their adorable wiener dog are going to make me cry. You've got what it takes. Beauty, it's what's for dinner. I am still here, El Guapo. Red and orange mantis-like bug on my hand-me-down from Peter, Ameripair Normcore mom jeans. Making a quick documentary about the park. Tell the story off-angle. All delivery drivers know all delivery drivers. A Burger King off Church Ave. Video is our weapon, showing others what we see. Ichiban the transitions. It seriously feels like October. The ocean's on fire. A viral image. At least the memes will be dank. Kelly Oxford, pink skies ahead. If he did it right, I wouldn't worry so much. Straight from the heart, sex is like fishing. I barely catch anything. You never know where anything you're looking for is, and when you catch it, who the hell knows why. 3 girls sit down to eat their food. Umbrella flips in the wind at my feet. Nobody claims it. Some guy left it. It's just kind of here. It's getting kind of cold. Think I'll go home. A magazine of the park. See, I don't know. I couldn't read that whole fucking piece. So it was cool that I just showed up, I think. And lended my support. She went out of her way to invite me. She reminded me the day of. It's like, fuck yeah, I want to go to this. It's what I live for. Should I read some more shit? The other thing that happened was today, the other poetic gift that was given to me that I just threw it away or laughed in its face was today I had to go to the Starbucks to use the Wi-Fi because my internet's slow as hell, and I had to pay the bill, I had to send an email, I had to do this, I just had to do a bunch of shit. So I'm like out front of the fucking Starbucks, like I'm sitting on the goddamn like rail that's like this thin for the fucking like divider of like the tree mulch from like the sidewalk, and I'm on my phone, I'm like paying this bill and doing this and that, and I stand up and I see, and I thought I saw him a few weeks ago, I don't remember where, maybe in Brooklyn somewhere. Yeah, I think I saw him in Prospect Park, actually. I see my friend, who I thought was in Colombia, Camilo, who's got a mustache. I see him, and I'm like, is he back? Is that him? Can that really be him? And he's walking, and I'm like, yeah, because he's walking with this other guy, Ted, who worked at the Poetry Project and was actually editor of the Poetry Project newsletter, funnily enough. And they're walking fucking down 8th Avenue to 23rd Street right at me as I'm on the fucking Wi-Fi at the Starbucks. I never go over there. I've never hardly been over there. I've certainly never used the Wi-Fi there. It was the first time I ever went over there. And they were walking at me. And, of course, what do? Rather than say hello, I pretend I don't see them. Because I'm like, well, here's the thing is I'm trying to find fucking some writers to read at the festival, and they sent me an email about it today, so I'm like kind of like, oh fuck, I really need to. I should have did this a few weeks ago. I've just been lazy about it, but I need to get back to them because I sent them this list of people that like was just preliminary, you know, like I definitely can get people. Like I'm not really worried about being able to find people, but part of me was like, well, Camilo's a guy. I already have one guy reading and then me. So I'd like to get females, and I don't know. I thought about asking him, you know, I thought, well, this is perfect. Like, this is why I came to the Starbucks, because I was going to email these people about reading. It's like, look what the cat dragged in. You know, this is a sign. Why not just ask him? You know, hey, you want to read at the pet festival? It's in... You know, he's kind of a name. Like, if I have fucking Don Yorty, Camilo Rodan, if I get one more, like... If I got somebody else with a name, it'd be like, fuck, this is pretty good reading, actually. Not like... Well, not that my usual readings aren't good, but they're not usually, like, renowned people at all, like, per se. You know, and I put this in my artistic statement, was like, I do traditionally, I think, publish people that I meet... I don't go out of my way to publish, like, people that haven't been published, but, like, if I like your writing and I see something in it aesthetically that I want to put forth, I don't care who the fuck you are. In fact, it's probably easier if you haven't been published. Maybe. Because it's like, you're just grateful to... You're not a snob about it. I don't know. You're grateful somebody... That's how I feel. The people that I've asked for work were super grateful about it. And I think that is just like an amazing attitude. That's what I love about poets. And so that's what's so weird about me being paranoid about talking to them, because they're friendly. They're not assholes usually. I'm the asshole. So, I don't know. They walked... I don't think they saw me. Because they, like, were standing there talking. I see Camilo Rodan, like, I run into him a lot. But I never talk to him. I see him, like, on the street, and I'm like, oh, my God. I've seen him at Unnameable. I saw him on the ferry on the way to the fucking poetry festival. Probably, what was that? That may have been 2017. He was, like, on his bike, and I didn't say anything to him then. It's like, I don't know why. I'm afraid. I don't know why. Because I'm insecure. I'm in the wrong business. Should I read some more shit, or... So that was my other gift. I looked a gift horse in the mouth. Alright, I got 12 minutes to 2 hours. Looking a gift horse in the mouth. Let's see here. Do I want to go back this far? Not sure if I want to read all this shit or not. He said, I love you till I die. I listen to George Jones a lot. Walk Through This World With Me. That's a good song for the day. George Jones, Walk Through This World With Me. It's a beautiful, touching song. I've been crying because I'm just so lonely. Walk Through This World With Me. Let's see. Farmer's Almanac, 7-8. Howard the Duck makes a cameo appearance. Looks can be deceiving. 7-9. Super Hits, Volume 2. Friday night. Time to go out. Even though I'm tired, and maybe I should just sleep. Bodily pain, tiredness, heartache, sadness, loneliness. Step right up. Come on in. The mystical instrument. It's 3 a.m. Thunder and lightning fall on the laughing employees. The blood from my body inflames London. I lost my little girl. I think you don't like dealing with emotional people because it reminds you of your family. Mercy took pause. They had no companions, poor man alone. They cut off the body, they cut off the heart, keep the streams loaded with blood. How could my life atone for what looked now like crimes, but at the time was imperial struggle? Settler colonialism I see all around me on Greenwich Avenue at Fiddlesticks Pub. Erasure, plagiarism, reconstituting stolen fragments to graft on which my scrambles. Things that are mixed up like his plants. Friday night I'm alone in hot vaxxed summer, which I think doesn't exist. Media hype willing things into being like all the other FOMO subterfuge. I always hurt, everything hurts. We are wounded animals, asking in tears for love, which is mercilessly withheld. My dad is the only person who ever really loved me. I'll go home with nothing. Nothing matters in the slow death of the world, which cannot be saved by egotism masquerading as heroism. There are no heroes, only careers. Armageddon weather systems flail all around. Back in Black throws tornadoes up the eastern seaboard. It's monsoon season in New York City. I've always hated white people. Now I'm one of them. Adversity in childhood makes you a substantial adult. Women think I'm ugly because I'm too good looking. Boy pretty, like Kelso, a girl told me in college. Our hearts were like boxing gloves, or maybe punching bags. I consider my work an act of excessive plagiarism. Wish I had a best friend or social group to import me wholesale. Help me fight for the world, and not with guilt, but with appropriative change. The revolution will have to be an accident, or it will never happen, because we are not brave or callous enough to do it ourselves. Starving for approval, I don't leave the house till midnight. 7:10, fast food. I've lost all hope in the things I used to believe in. 7-Eleven, stealing. Why does your mom still look at my stories? I get a rush from the vibration of a push notification. If I could do it all over again, I'd be taller. Please subjugate and perform erasure over my white labor. It's only fair to perish with the oceans of martyrs and anonymity. Global population of martyrs. Put a scoop out the port. Alpha emit high-frequency signal anathema to me, blindingly painful. I buckle like Shatner on Star Trek. 7:12, and this was today, or yesterday, I guess at this point. Cadman Records. Weird these years, we were stuck together. The Trump years, we fought our war of light. Missing you now, wishing I was nicer. This offer applies retroactively. Once we started, I was trying to break it, and did. Now I'm broken. Heartache really is for the gods. Awesome power of wailing, crying. The pragmatic facts of life are not idealistic or convenient. What I'd like to do, I take caution with. Raw power of tears, raw power wept. Just need drainage. Chemically, I don't see anybody, though I hardly try. Bi-coastal is what I want to be. Poor, wrong, my decade thrown away. An incredible tightrope act on the threshold of the ledge of a world spent 10 years too afraid to enter at any time. I refused to meet the conscientious dreams I'd requested with the menial amount of courage they required. I squander copious opportunities. It's why I live in New York City, to fail this close, to leave my family for 10 years and get nowhere, to treat potential new family as job opportunity, ladder to climb, network to build, which I negotiated not at all with no grace, nor no finesse. 36 alone, crying, balding, looking every gift horse in the mouth, and haven't got laid doing it almost a year and a half, totally not on purpose. Andy Griffith theme song. I feel like I was a POW in a Vietnamese prison camp, being makeshift electrocuted on wire box springs, while she talks about her new boyfriend and gets their picture taken a year ago today. Unfair torture from God. Why do I wish the worst upon myself? Why do I see it that way? My destiny is near miss. I've had a life off stage right to myself and secret angels. Off Broadway, way off, but happening. Each we the center of our own circumference, absorbing secondhand NYU, sucking Saturn through a straw. Suffering gives us karma tickets that we get to spend in the thrill shop of heaven, right? Right? Dissociation Historical Society. Intraclitilian. Cunctipotent. What is got? Gain booty. Earnings. 1865. The distance we traveled. 396. Latex network. Spawn blue latitude along the lathe. Gangly. Carefully tasted. Neurological peaking index. The cars are on the track. Gunshot source livelihood. Combined gushing hashtag. Ecstatica, the nature of trance. Pheromone decimation. Freezers open Hamlet glaxing. Roses of heaven trailing hypochondria. Direct fit Lexington jail. Kilns baking lockets. Gravelly faculty mashup. A diet of snow. Nutsack and botany. Pfizer quasi-deuce. Your complete guide to supplement and bibliography. Plague sojourn, one you haven't heard. Fingerprints, subcoastal, waterlined. A revoltrous tree oceanic set in their ways. Laughter comes from upstairs. Babs's uvula who? I don't know Babs, but I do know this. Page 3579. One of the first books I bought in a bookstore as a high schooler was Bruce Lee's journals. In isolation, you are least alone. You are with your thoughts. What a joy to talk to them. You have to be like water, life-giving, cleansing, solitary, powerful, flexible, able to fit any container. Jeet Kune Do, a decoupage of styles, a styleless style, a formless form. It is perfect to be imperfect. One punch 10,000 times. The bats are flying from the bat houses to the swamps of Gainesville, Florida, to get information from people, to write about them, to come up from the ranks of the street people. Diamonds in the wall, just other side of where you quit. Traveling country by foot, our fears spoiled our freedom. Misheard by poet punches it up, alone on the roads. You learn to speak to yourself. I said it less. The receipt would make a good piece. It's like Canada has its own entirely own culture, stomping the vault, a little bit of a name at a time, blackout on Goldberg Street. Back to school. Partially out of fear, the music of strangers, real flowers of this painful world. Ugh, no more Kelso, please. My ex had this picture of Jimi Hendrix pinned up on the wall next to her bed in the room at her parents' house, where she slept in high school and all her childhood. And I'd look at the picture and know she wasn't going to end up with me. She turns to the camera and cries. That's what I'm thinking about today. Truth includes more than beauty. Truth is beauty, but truth is also ugliness. In fact, probably more frequently, it is ugliness. And it starts raining on the protagonist without an umbrella. Also, botched moment not saying hello to two nice girls eating pizza in front of Chinese restaurant last night on the strip, when clearly we both wanted it. A moment of casual mutual pleasantry, recognition, exchange of mood-bolstering kindness, and onward into a night made new by that moment of impromptu friendship. Only it didn't happen. But was realizing it could have happened enough? That's what I do. I'm just there, silent and active, watching, witnessing, taking what I can get, taking them as they come. So that's today's verse, and we nailed it. 2 hours. Look forward to the Frankly Fabulous World Tour of New York City. Coming at you summer 2021. Kicking off tryouts, out-of-town tryouts this Thursday. Maybe I'll go to Staten Island or Jersey. Maybe I'll go to Jersey City. Do an out-of-town tryout there. And then New York Poetry Festival, 11 days, countdown. We're counting down the moments to the New York Poetry Festival. Be there. Governor's Island. Reserve your ticket on the ferry today, brother. You do not want to miss this. It's the reading of the year. It's the WrestleMania of poetry. Good night, my Frank Little Fabulists. Sleep tight. Have the greatest dreams of your life.